to teach the world to sing. Sing with me.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside.
Da, 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 da. I love that song. That's really good. Looks like I got the glory of God coming down on me today. The lighting in this room is not all that good. So, welcome to Compass of kraM. And it says right there that I'm a big star. And I guess I'm a big star only because I am a big star. So, wait, let's see. Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll go with that. Anyway, no, Compass of kraM. kraM is my name spelled backwards, and my compass is a little bit skewed. It goes in many, many directions, as you might have seen had you watched any of the shows that we've done before. So what I do is I pick out a couple of topics every week, just general topics. Who knows where they're going to go, and I invite people to come and discuss these topics with me. But I don't spring it on them. There'll be a time when I will. I probably shouldn't have said that. That'll scare people off if they come on the show and they don't know what the topic is. Hey, you never know. So, but as it stands right now, to get people involved, I am picking topics. And let's see, what did I pick for this week? Okay, a couple of topics. The first topic is profiling people in every sense of the word. Now, used to be, before they started profiling people at airports, when we started having a lot of terrorist attacks and everything, that word profiling was really no big deal in general sense. Now, we all knew what that meant, and we knew that it was being done around our country and around the world. But once the 9/11 happened, and once we started getting a lot of terrorist attacks, that word profiling became huge. So we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight and discuss it with the people that have showed up here, the people that want to come and play in my sandbox. Those are the ones that I like having here. And also the other topic is devil on one shoulder and angel on the other. Now, come on. Y'all have seen cartoons or watched a movie or something where they superimpose a devil on one shoulder, and he's sitting there and he's talking to one and he's talking to another, and all that kind of stuff. But there's a theme behind that. So I thought we'd discuss that a little bit tonight and kind of see what others think along those lines. But today happens to be Labor Day. So people are laboring. They're not laboring. They're taking the day off, So, but I do have some friends, people that do like to play in my sandbox with me. And we're going to bring in Rabbi Daryl Weinberg, the Weinberg. Is that how you pronounce your last name there, Rabbi? Is Weinberg or Weinberg?
Well, when we went to Germany on the way to Bulgaria a number of years ago, we were at the Frankfurt airport, and they looked at my last name, and when they went to call me, they said Weinberg.
And it kind of stuck a little there.
And since my last name is German in origin, there you go.
Okay, well. Hey, those things stick sometimes, so be careful. All right, so is Melena joining us tonight?
She will be here shortly, just cleaning up after the barbecue today.
Yeah, I was going to say, so a little bit of roasted pig there today. Is that what we
No, we didn't break out the spit this time.
Oh, you didn't. Okay, this
No.
time. All right.
You know, I was at a Baptist planters
Okay.
together a
You're
number of
not
years ago.
profiling or anything, are you, when you say Baptist?
No,
Okay,
absolutely
all right.
not. Other than Baptist.
I
And
thought
so
maybe
we
we'd already started the show and I didn't know it. You know,
walked into the backyard and saw the pig on the spit, and I thought, oh God. And then everybody, and we walked in, it was almost like there was a hush that went through the crowd, and it was like, ooh, how's he going to react?
I want pictures, man. I want pictures.
There's a lot of people who are thinking, because I have a reputation in our denomination of throwing it down, and so
Okay.
anyway.
All right. Well, you grabbed that pig and throw it down. Oh, it landed in the dirt. Oh, what's the deal? So, all right.
Anyway, so who cares?
That's right. Okay, well, let's bring the buyers in. They were with us last week, and I love to see you come in laughing. That's good. I like that. So, Rabbi James and Rabbi Savia is joining.
Shalom.
Shalom. I can only imagine that big fat pig just falling down water in the dirt, just rolling
I want
down
pictures.
the hill.
Surprised a bunch of demons didn't run into it.
Oh, yeah. Really. Oh my gosh. Well,
People running after their food. Wait.
really. So, speaking of that, have you guys ever heard the story of the rabbi that was just befuddled about all this eating pork thing? I mean, obviously he'd never eaten pork, and he, just didn't get the whole idea behind it, even though it was in Torah. Hi, Milena. And
Hi.
I'm telling about a rabbi that's a little befuddled about this pork thing in the Bible. And so he has a rather large congregation, but he knows of a restaurant about 30 miles away. And he figures, I really think I may want to try this pork thing and see what the deal is. But if I go to a restaurant 30 miles away, then it's more likely that none of the congregation are going to come into the restaurant 30 miles away. So he goes down there, he orders his food, and he's a little nervous. He's watching up and down the aisles, and waiting on his food. And all of a sudden, the door comes open, and it's a whole family from his congregation comes walking in the front door of this restaurant. And he's kind of trying to hide his face and kind of looking down and everything. And of course, as they come to his booth, they bring the rabbi's food out, and they all kind of meet all together there. And they're like just flabbergasted and mouth wide open. And the rabbi's sitting there going, "Oh, hey, you order an apple and look how they bring it." All right, we can talk about that subject if you like. Nah, never happened. Never happened. I'll tell you what. Jewish jokes are great. Jews tell the best jokes on themselves. I'm going to tell you. Anyway, that's one of my all-time favorites right there. But okay, well, Milena, good to have you in here. You kind of came in the middle of that. So the Rabbi Daryl here was just explaining how good the pig was today, the roasted pig on the spit. But you want to chime in on that or anything? No.
About a pig?
Barbecue.
Yeah, the barbecue. Yes, the barbecue was great. We just had people come in that are looking, you know what, I think this whole COVID thing actually has created, the lockdowns have created amazing opportunities to form relationships in your neighborhoods because everybody's stuck in their house, and even the kids that came out, all the parents were saying, oh, they've been, deprived, and just the kids gathered and we all gathered, and it was just wonderful because some of those people were looking just for relationships. And you know what? They were. We didn't even have, like, we had a little pamphlet introducing our Bible study, and people, like, we didn't have to tell them to take one. Some of them were actually taking,
very cool,
and reading and interested in what's happening and connections being made. And this is how God works. But we have to be obedient to open our. People were surprised we were opening our home, and they were just in our driveway, like they weren't in the house. But yeah, it actually made me a little sad that people were surprised that somebody would do something like that for the neighborhood.
Interesting, very cool.
There was time when there was a normal thing,
Yeah,
years back.
That's true, real true. Yeah, block parties. You bet.
Yep.
Yeah.
You bet. So Avi, you were saying you guys went to an event today too? Is that?
No, our event was cleaning up the center.
Oh.
And preparing for Yom Teruah. Yom Teruah, we were out there just cleaning and vacuuming, getting ready. We haven't been in there for 6 months. So you can only imagine. We've been, I'm thinking we've gone in and start cleaning, but before. The process is just huge. But anyway, we were out there just doing that. When we pulled up to the house and got out, it was like 6:30, and I looked at my husband. I said, "Boss, I'm tired." I was tired, boss. It is just, it was a lot of work.
And I was thinking, my wife is working me like a Hebrew slave.
So we're excited about that. And the assembly is excited about coming together. So we just have a lot of preparation that we have to do to bring everybody together. So
there's a lot of excitement right now for us because as you know, we've been meeting virtually. And so we take the opportunities for the birthdays, to get together and have some barbecue. So we
beef.
we take those opportunities not lightly, So we're able to get together with the families and different ones. So now planning and going through setup and structuring and cleaning and preparation, just getting the center back in working order is just amazing. So this is all part of the build up,
Yeah, I tell you.
I
have much respect for those Levites and that keeping the temple up.
Yeah, that's fact. Yeah, I'm very familiar with it. Very familiar. Now you guys were at Chandler one time, Lion Lamb, one time, right?
Yes.
And I was there for, I think we did 17 years of it, and we worked every single year that we were there, and we got a real big taste of what it was like to maintain a temple, maintain the big ministry with 1,200 people every time and all of that. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm very.
Oh my gosh, I can't. It's unimaginable. 12 people. We've had 100 people at Tabernacles, and we get finished, and we're like, whoo,
right.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's amazing. People just don't realize all that goes into the planning of a feast day like that.
We started 7 months before Sukkot. The first meeting was 7 months before Sukkot. That's the planning goes into hosting 1,200 people for Sukkot.
Absolutely.
I'm with you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, Daryl, don't you have a birthday coming up here pretty soon?
Couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Well,
Pardon me?
mine is Wednesday. This Wednesday.
Oh my
That's our
goodness.
anniversary.
That's your anniversary. Well, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Happy birthday.
Yeah, really.
Happy birthday.
I actually got a present today. I think I took it out, but I got a present today, and so I was thrilled. I wasn't expecting a present today, so it's nice to get one when you don't expect one. So
yeah, see, at your age, it's a celebration. You made it to another year.
You know, brother, I'm going to go with it, man. I'm just going to go with it. That's all there is to it. All right. All right. I enjoy you guys so much. All right. Well, let's jump right into our first topic here. And James and Aviyam may have to leave here pretty soon, but so we're gonna jump in here and get it going. This is a subject that I deal with personally on a regular basis, and I think anybody that doesn't admit to the fact or even acknowledge the fact that they personally profile people is really not dealing with reality. That's a hard thing to say, but I think it's true. I have my entire life. I was raised with racist parents. They were racist in about every different way that they could be, and their family was very racist. All my aunts and uncles and my grandparents and everybody that I knew, we'd sit around the Thanksgiving table and the jokes would fly and the names would be said for different types of people and Jews and all kind. I mean, I grew up here in about every possible slang there was for different people. And so as I grew up and I would see people on the street, or I'd meet people or people in my school and that type of thing, obviously those thoughts were there. But the Lord had to be preparing me for a better way of life, because I didn't have a problem with any people, with whether it be a race of people, a nationality of people, or a people that would be different in some way. And that's profiling too. I mean, when you see even you see a handicapped person, you can profile a handicapped person. And then, of course, if they're of a different race, then you're double profiling, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds. And I have to admit, even yet still today, there are times when I have to check myself, and I do pretty good. I have done a whole lot better in the past 15, 20 years than I ever did before. But I'm always interested in a dialogue with people, a discussion with people that how they think along those same lines, how they feel about that. I mean, once again, like with me growing up as children and how we raise our children. I raised my daughter. I raised our sons in the older. I married Adina, and her sons were 12 and 13 when I married her. But it was a whole different story. So once again, I think it's a huge issue. Once again, like I said before, when 9/11 happened, I think that was probably the biggest mass profiling that came after that. publicly talking about profiling Muslim people and people that were considered terrorists and that type of thing, adding to profiles that you didn't already have, and so once again, I'm real interested in hearing what everybody else has to say about it. And that's why I put in the title Profiling People in Every Sense of the Word, because it's not just about race or nationality or anything else. It literally can be a job that somebody has. You see them, somebody cleaning the street. You could profile that person as being extremely poor. How do you know that person may be extremely rich and this is just what they want to do? So it really has to do with profiling. And how is it right? It can be right. And how is it wrong? It's in most senses, it is wrong. So I'm going to start with Daryl, my friend. What do you think? Would you like to give us your opinion on this?
Well, we did an outreach event this past weekend with a Jamaican pastor, and anytime I pass Jamaicans, I'm looking for jerk chicken. So, I mean, I think that
profiling.
I'm profiling. So it's, I'm wondering where the food is. I think that to say that we don't profile is completely unrealistic. And even God profiles in the Bible. I mean, he says a Moabite or a Canaanite is not allowed into the sanctuary to the 10th generation because of what they've done. If we're profiling people based on the color of their skin, that's a racial issue and that is wrong. However, at the same time, I think that when we start to evaluate people based on the values of their community. So I had a conversation with somebody who has racist tendencies. And he said, he's often makes comments about, well, this type of people, this and this type of people, that. And I said, well, that's racist to say that because not all people of that, classification are like that. Well, I wouldn't feel safe in such a situation. I said, well, what you're talking about is a value of that community. And so I don't think it is unreasonable, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong to say that there are certain values among certain communities that we don't agree with. There's a city in just northwest of Toronto. It's really considered a suburb. And there is it has got the highest car insurance rates in Canada. And the reason is because there is the most insurance fraud in the country in that small city. And that city has a disproportionately high percentage of a certain people from a certain part of the world. And although you can't say that those people necessarily, because of the color of the skin or where they come from, but the values of their community, which is largely based on their faith system. Because if we have a certain faith system that promotes and allows for that type of thing, then the community is going to adopt that. And so I don't think it is, I think it's naive to think that we don't and we shouldn't be profiling. The reason why Israel has got the reputation for the safest airline in the world, El Al Air, has never had a terrorist attack, is because they bloody well racially profile. And rightfully so. And I remember that in 2005, when we went to Israel, there was a woman from our sister congregation down near Los Angeles, and she was Arabic in background, Egyptian, As a matter of fact, interestingly enough, she was in school the day that Israel attacked the Egyptian Air Force in the 67 war, and her school was right across the street from the airport, or the airbase rather. And the Israeli customs officers, I mean, they pulled her aside and they went up one side of her and down the other, and she was quite mad. And I'm asking her, well, what are you getting so upset for? They're just protecting their own people, and they want to make sure that, you know, everything is copacetic with you. They don't know you're a Christian. And even if you claim to be a Christian, well, anybody can claim that. They got to know for sure. And so the reason why countries all over the world ask Israel to help them with security, because they understand racially profiling. They don't do it because of racist tendencies. They do it because they know the values of the particular community that they are targeting. So I think we need to be very careful. I don't think that we can make judgments based on the color of one's skin, because we've got people of all colors who are both good and bad. But when you start identifying particular values of certain communities, I think you're a lot closer to something. Some people might disagree with that, but I think that just falls into the category of prudence.
True. Very good. Yeah, very well said. Religion is a huge profiling amongst especially the United States. You go to other countries and it's not nearly as much, but man, the United States and religious profiling is huge, very huge. I want to jump to Avia. Would love to hear what you have to say.
I agree with what most of our brothers said. You know, we see in the scripture where Father Yah does separate. He's a God of distinction. So he distinguishes between Israel and the nations. He distinguishes between the different groups of people. But the interesting thing about that is that if a stranger or another people or person decides they want to become of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they are immediately transported and become part of the house of Israel. Mm-hmm. So that is the beautiful thing, you know. Mashiach, he settled the whole question with that concerning that when he said, "Who is my mother? Who is my brother? He who does the will of my Father." So if we can see our brethren, and the thing of it is, you know, the whole understanding of the code of Yosef, the coat of many colors, the great, we know it wasn't about the colors, but it was about the greatness, the position that he was holding in the family, that coat of many colors was a vision of the house of Israel, because it's a promise that was given to Father Abraham from the Most High, saying that every nation in the earth will be blessed because of you. So we see our brothers Israel being from every race, every continent, every group of people. The house of Israel has been salted out in that area. That's the harvest that Father Yahweh is going to bring from the earth. So, but there is that distinction that he makes with Israel and the nation. Now, so far as this country has just been is really special in the thoughts of profiling. And Mark, you know, thank you for that testimony concerning your family, because a lot of times people, and we find our white brethren that don't like to or won't admit to that. Right. Because they don't want to, they have a view of racism, and many of them will say when they have, I heard my brother say, racist tendencies. Well, to a black person, that's a racist. We don't classify that as characteristics. You can't have the characteristics and not be that. So you can't have a pig snout and not be a pig. You know what I'm saying? A duck, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, hey, it's a duck. So if a person has things coming out of their mouth that are characteristics of something, that's what they are. That's what is in the heart. What's in the heart comes out to the mouth. The mouth speaks what is in the heart. So this nation just has a really interesting way of not acknowledging their issues, especially around race. You know, it's interesting because even when we came into this walk, we thought we were going to be that there was going to be a big difference. We thought, you know, there are brothers, you know, we're all walking in the Torah, we're studying the word, and we saw racism hit us in the face in the Hebrew walk. Wow. We are huge in the area of praise and worship. My husband and I come from long lines of musicians. Our children are musicians. We praise and worship is in our DNA. Our grandchildren are raised. Children come out of the womb singing and playing the piano and playing the drums. And, you know what I'm saying? It's in our DNA. And we were even told at tabernacles that our music, take some of the bass out of the music, you know, they like it loud. They like, I mean, just statements that should not be spoken, especially when we say that we are all Israel. And thinking about that, thinking about all of the colorfulness and all of the characteristics of Israel, of all of the sons, the 12 sons, and all of their Father Yaakov, when he gave the blessings to his sons, you could see all of the beautiful color, all of the different characteristics of those sons, and how some of them overlap, but some of them didn't. And it's going to be the same way with the house of Israel. But because this nation itself was founded on slavery, there is that mindset that is that's almost innate within a group of people, the people who have been raised with privileges that those slave people were not raised with. So there's the automatic thought that, they have so much crime in their neighborhood. Well, crime is in a neighborhood anytime you have poverty and you don't have enough jobs, you have the husbands that leave the home or not in the home, because during the time of slavery, all of this was taught. Because in Africa, you didn't have wives, mothers without husbands. Now, the African cultures of the tribes were extremely built on families. The fathers, the husbands, the patriarchs were the lampstand within the families. They were the glue within the family, the light of family, the historians of the different nations and tribes of people. But once you enslave a people, there comes a mentality that you begin to foster and nurture. And when you talk about 267 years, we can go into the book of Exodus and we can see from the end of Genesis, Bereshit, and a whole different mindset group of people when we open up just the next book, Shemot.
Yeah.
Why? because we're talking about generations of slavery, generations of being told you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not worth anything more than this, you don't get any more than this, we won't provide you any more than this because you're not worth this. And then that same group of people, once you are freed through the Emancipation Proclamation, then you're freed, but that doesn't free you from the mentality that has been fostered and nurtured. It doesn't free you from the redlining and saying, you can't live in a certain neighborhood, you can't go to a certain school, you can't buy a certain house, you can't get a certain job, you can only go to a certain college. There's so much that goes, that levels and depths of racism that has to be dug up in order to bring this people to a mindset of freedom. And that's what we see. We see the children of Israel, our forefathers, wandering through the wilderness 40 years. Father, y'all been trying to get rid of that mindset that has been indoctrinated in them. So now you look at that and you look at our nation. We're a nation of profilers. A nation of profilers. Just the other day, my good friend, Dr. Flowers, she's my coworker, and she said she had her a worker that was coming over to our house, and he was coming in. He was the maintenance guy. He was coming in to do some work, and he was from Mexico. He's Mexican, and so very nice man. And they're just having a discussion. And she said, "Oh," and she looked at him, and she just automatically thought to herself that, "Oh, I guess he does have his papers because he's able to work." And she said, "Oh man, whatever his name was, poor little guy, he probably goes home and, has a bunch of kids and doesn't have, She finds out that the man is married to a cardiothoracic surgeon. His wife is a cardiothoracic surgeon for one of the major hospitals right here in Winston-Salem. Wow. It's a beautiful home, pool outside. So he's talking to her about a pool, and he mentions, "Yeah, my pool at home." And she's like, "What?" Like, rewind. "You have a pool at home?"
Sure.
Automatically, she profiled him.
Right.
So, but I believe it's because we live in a nation that's just what we do. People just get profiled. We just automatically think that someone is bad because they look a certain way, or because they have a certain hairstyle. Right. I have a wonderful professor at our university who has long locks, long dreads down past his knee, and he does not go out at night. He will not go out at night. Yeah. And he says, because all they're going to see is a black man with long locks. Right. They don't know that I'm a PhD. They don't know that I'm a neuroscience major and a neuroscience teacher at Winston-Salem State University. They don't know that. All they know is that they see a black man walking down the street with his wife, and he has long locks. He's up to no good. Yeah. So it's something that's been fostered in this nation. With that Willie Lynch manifesto, it did so much damage to our people as a people. And then they just kind of built on that. Because look, when the immigrants came in, the Irish were profiled. Yeah. Irish were no good. Yeah. They're horrible. They're lazy. They're this. They're that. They're a bunch of drunks. Every group of people, this nation is just a nation of profilers.
Yep, it's fact. Very good fact. Daryl, you wanted to respond to something.
Well, yeah. Yes, God did spend 40 years trying to beat the slave mentality out of the children of Israel, but he also judged them for it.
Absolutely.
And as believers, there has to be a point where we got to take personal response. I was watching just the other day, I was watching Morgan Freeman. He was interviewed by Don Lemon, who is, I mean, that dude is a race baiter extraordinaire. I mean, that's all he's paid to do. And this interview was back from 2014. And he was trying to say, blacks don't have the same opportunity in this country. And Morgan Freeman looked at him and he said, that's BS. And he didn't use the initials either. And he says, look at me. He says, we all have the opportunity. There's, as we discussed last week in talking about all men created equal, there is never a completely level playing field. I mean, we live in a sin-fallen world. Right. And I think that especially as believers, we need to work so hard against settling in to that what other people force upon us. We have the right, both physically and spiritually, to refuse those labels and say, I will not accept that because I'm a child of the Most High God. Right. And so I think there's got to be balance. I think you're right, Abiel. We have to recognize that there are inherent imbalances within the system, and it's much more prevalent in the United States than it is in Canada. I mean, my wife did her teacher's college in the United States, and the 3 Canadians were absolutely aghast at the level of racism that was built into the system. But at the same time, I also think that we need to strive to overcome that, because that's where the enemy gets us. He wants to put us down. He wants us to make us accept what he's giving us. Right. And I think we have the authority in Yeshua's name to say no to that.
We have the responsibility as believers.
Absolutely.
We have the responsibility to work on not being that way. I mean, I'm not going to say just straight out that we can just stop it. I mean, I work on it, but over the years, like I just said, the past 15 years have been a lot easier for me because I worked on it up into and still working on it, but I was able to overcome a lot of those things just simply by experience.
And so, God was angry at Israel because they refused to shed the mentality. I mean, he gave them freedom and they wouldn't embrace it.
Well, the only thing, and I hear what you're saying. And the only difference, the only problem with that statement is, and I like Morgan Freeman, but I don't agree with him on it. And I'm going to tell you why I don't agree. Because if somebody's standing on my foot, every day you come to my office and you step on my foot and you say, get over it, but you're still standing on my foot. How do I get over the pain of you standing on my foot until you take your foot off of my foot? So
well, maybe you got to push them off.
So I can stop. Well, that's what we're doing. And that's what we do. Right, and the thing of it is, even in pushing them off, but then there comes the rebuttal to us. So now there is much to our life in this country. There's a conversation that every Black family has to have with their. Now, it used to be our sons. Now it's also our daughters. And that conversation is when a police officer pulls you over, not if, it's when a police officer pulls you over and puts a gun to your head, keep your hands on the steering wheel. Yeah. Do not move. Answer him politely. Try your best, because what you're trying to do is stay alive and keep your children alive. And my husband is I know he's gonna chime in, but having a Black husband raising a Black son, they both have profiled by police officers, pulled over, guns put to their head, yanked out the car for no reason. Yeah. breaking any law.
Well,
My husband was walking next to a police cruiser to get to his car.
Yeah.
Was beat up by police officers in New York, taken down in a subway station. He shouldn't even be sitting here today.
Yeah.
So when we talk about not allowing somebody to take us to that place or dictate who we are, it's really hard to do that when you are just trying your best to stay alive. And that's what we've been trying to do in this country. We have Ku Klux Klan. They call them nationalists, but I rebuke that.
Yeah.
They are terrorists. They
Yeah.
have terrorized
I agree.
the Black people. They have terrorized our people post-slavery. We had to build potato bins big enough for our husbands and our sons to hide in so that they wouldn't come and just arbitrarily hang them up in the tree in front of them and burn them and kill them. So when you talk about not allowing someone, we're not allowing anyone to be racist and to kill us. We don't allow for police to pull us over and to shoot us, even though our hands are up in the air.
Yeah.
How are we allowing them to do that? You know, when you try to keep the law and try to be lawful, we are big on the law. We are big in the Torah. We teach our children that, but it's still happening. Now we understand that Father uses a people to bring his people into a place of subjection and also to bring his people. And I believe that's what's happening with our people, that he's calling a covenant people back to him. He uses nations of people to call his people back to righteousness. And I believe that's all that is happening. But, you know, you can only speak to it when you've lived it. Right. And I'm telling you, it is more than pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It's more than, because when you have authorities, and Paul spoke about this, dealing and fighting against spiritual wickedness in high places, places that have authority over you, when you have no authority to fight for yourself on that level, it's only been Father Yah that has kept us. It's only been him.
Right.
We are definitely not victims. We are victorious. Yeah. But there is a system that has been set up against us. And that is, we can't stop that system from being racist against us. We can't stop them from doing that.
That's right.
We're not at fault for that. That is the mentality and the hatred and the anger and the evil that is happening in our society today against our people.
You're right. One thing I could never ever do was to say I know how you feel. I never think even that way. It's the same thing with Jewish people.
Thank you.
I mean, I have never lived a life that the Jews have gone through, at all. And so I understand. And I mean, even Milena here, who is from Hungary.
Bulgaria.
That's in my head. I mean, she's in the States as, I mean, somebody from another country, I mean, just somebody knowing that can easily set somebody off. So I can never say, I know how you feel. I'm a white man. I'm a white man in the United States, and I have no idea how it feels, but I can have empathy. I can, and I do. And I try to understand the best I can. And that's why I do shows like this. Yeah. That's why I bring these subjects up, because I do want to hear it. And it also gives me place to pray. I'm going to give James the last word. So, Milena, Go ahead.
Oh, me. Okay. So yes, to me, it's been really interesting because, like you said, I didn't grow up in North America. I came from a country where actually cultural diversity was in. I didn't see it because we lived in a communist regime where our borders were closed and we weren't allowed to go out of the country freely and to have others, especially people who were not from communist countries. So I think I was deprived, really. And so when my family moved to Canada, I will say it, my family also had racist tendencies, and that was because they just did not know anyone of different culture. And I'm not talking about color only, I'm talking culture. I'm talking because we were not exposed to a different culture whatsoever. We were kept under that restriction. And I'll tell you something. I grew up in that culture. I was 15 years old when I moved to North America. And when I came and I saw the diversity of people, my heart was like, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. This is just, I have been deprived. That was my feeling. And I was even starting to tell my parents, like, no, my friends are such nice, like they're from India and from this and that. And I was embarrassed that my parents held that view, but I understood that they too were not educated in that. And sometimes we fear something we don't know. Sometimes we become prejudiced towards something we don't know. And I'll tell you something. Yes. And then now that I'm used to like Canadian culture, then I go off to Buffalo, New York, and I'm in teachers college. And in my teachers college there, we had very interesting, we had a subject called Social Foundations of Education. And so we are reading this, and the whole time it was Blacks, Hispanics, and whites, and, and sometimes Asians. And then I'm like, why are they speaking of students this way? Like, and I agree with you, Avia. I mean, we shouldn't be speaking of our children in these groups. And so we, like the Canadian students in the class, we went back and it's like, is this a historic document? Do you guys still do education system like that? And they said, oh yeah, like this is how still it is. And one of my classmates, she was a white girl, but she came from a lower socioeconomic community. And she said, when I was growing up, I was told, like, I wanted to be a doctor. I just wanted to help people be a doctor. And I was told, oh, well, your mom's a secretary. You'll make a really nice secretary. And, so in this way, it had nothing to do with her color. No, it had to come with the family she came from. And I was really hit hard and how in the United States, the education system sets up.
It's a case system.
It sets it up. And so Mark, I understand that you grew up this way because, and I was just really amazed that it's still being done because I never had it in my heart. Even before I was a believer, I was excited about diversity and cultures and so forth. So, and then I'm sitting in this literacy class, how to, promote literacy in the classroom. And then one of the student teachers, she admitted she doesn't understand the culture of the Black families in her school. And because I'm realizing she wasn't educated, because she says, well, we were talking about Christmas time and everybody's celebrating Christmas. She's like, well, I don't know what to do with the Black kid in my class. I don't know how to approach this time for him. And I said, how do you approach the other kids in your class when you don't know much about them? Do you ask them questions about their families? She's like, yeah. Well, ask that kid what they celebrate. Like, it doesn't matter what color that kid is. It doesn't matter what cultural background is. Ask them.
Wow.
Seek to learn and to understand. Well, first of all, my classmate, who is the other Canadian girl I was traveling with through the border to go to classes, she got so furious that somebody would even, and again, this girl was a white girl, but she was furious. She's like, how could they be just so ignorant of the fact that everybody's a human being? And she was like Daryl's personality a little bit. She's like, you'd better answer this girl's question because I will say some things that are not going to be very nice. Well, and she knew very well. So, holding each thought captive and holding our tongue is very important.
Are you saying I don't do that?
You do that more than this girl did, but we were younger at the time, and yes, you do it. With my help, you've been getting even better. No, with God's help, not my help, and that's the thing. With God's help,
I should be offended.
But this is what I'm talking about. It's just for someone who doesn't see it that way. I guess I was blessed about the fact that because there was no cultural diversity, I wasn't taught racism whatsoever. It was just maybe some prejudice in my family just because they didn't know the other cultures, but there was no preconceived notions there. And I think the idea is that we have to seek to understand one another, the different cultures, I think diversity is enriching our country. Rather than and what's happening right now, all these racial wars, that is causing division between the people rather than having a united country, rather than having a prosperous country where when people come together, they can achieve so much more. I mean, it's a bad example, but think of the Tower of Babel. I mean, even God said, if I don't separate these people in their languages, they will be a force to be reckoned with, right? So, but just that to show you that God even recognizes if people are united, they can achieve more. Now, our obligation is obviously to be under God's law, under God's guidance when we come together, rather than do it in our own strength, rather than do it through our own wisdom, which is obviously we know what that is. It's no good, our own wisdom, unless we tap into God's wisdom. And that's, that's where we have to be really combining our culture, because I think God respects culture, our cultural background with God's culture. Because one thing I'll tell you, my husband's Jewish, and he's weeping about the fact how the Jewish culture has been lost out of the church, out of the, because that's, and we all recognize we wouldn't have Jesus if it wasn't for the Jewish people, you know what I mean? Because that's the people that God chose to bring the Messiah through. And it's not the people we have to thank, but at the same time, we have to value the culture that God set up. So to me, it's, I grieve. I grieve that the division this is causing. And I think we are all God's children, and God's, I think, is grieving the division that is happening. And it's easy, like Avia, like you said, it's easy when somebody has been hurt over and over to react and hurt. But at the same time, we have to really fight hard to, I know the struggle. I don't understand what somebody who's being racially profiled goes through. But at the same time, like Mark, you said, I come from a different culture. So I've been, in some way felt like an outsider at some point too. And we all just need to focus about the fact that God wants his children to be part of one family. And I'm thinking that when I first learned that Yeshua came for his people first, and he wasn't the God of the, he didn't come for the Christians first, but he came for the Jews. It was like, my mind just blew up. When Yeshua said to the Syrophoenician woman, it's not good to feed, the food for the children to the dogs. And I thought he was being so rude to this woman. I mean, why is he equating her to a dog, just because she's Syrophoenician, she's from a different culture. And I know Yeshua is not racist or prejudiced. What he was saying, that we all have a role in our diversity, but he was saying, I came for my people first. And even Ezekiel has said, the Gentiles will be part of God's family one day. They will be accepted. And that's God's desire. But he deals with his people first, and the slavery that happened to them and all the nations evading them, that happened to them just so that we may learn what not to do. And that's what I have to say about that. It grieves me, the division.
Very, very well said. Very good. So far, the number one thing I think, the number one word I think that is so underestimated as a derogatory 4-letter word is the word they.
Yeah.
THEY. The way it's used, they, we don't listen to ourselves when we say it. I think above everything else, we have the responsibility to correct it in our own lives, but we have the responsibility to check ourselves and listen to what we say, especially when we start our sentences with they. So, James, it's all yours, brother.
Just listening to everyone and the thoughts are going, and I want to start with a scripture. Exodus chapter 19. This should be very familiar. And because of the angle of our camera and when you see me looking down, I'm actually looking at my scriptures. So,
Okay.
So verse 5 says, "And now if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, and for all the earth is mine, and you shall be a reign of priests and a set apart nation. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel." And so, of course, this is Moshe as he's giving the commandments. The next chapter, we'll see that a little more prevalent. And then Joshua chapter 22. Now, with that, I want to just kind of give a visual of people that are identifiable. And Yahweh has identified. So we're using the word profile. And so profiling is a modern cultural phenomenon, a word that is being utilized to identify. So I want to go to the meat of the issue, which is identifying people, cultures, traditions, social groups, social norms. And so what happens, and I too want to thank you for just sharing your background as well, because everyone don't admit to something that foundational. And so let me follow suit. I know that my father was also racial, and although I didn't come up that way, he didn't really push it off on us. But I know that you know your parents. My father left North Carolina, South Carolina. He grew up in North Carolina, but he was born just over the border or the line in South Carolina. Grew up in North Carolina, and as he started having children, or he and my mother got married, they moved right away to Virginia and then on into New York, which is where I was raised. And so later on, he reveals that he had to leave the South because of his mentality. My father, to this very day, is a big man. So I'm pretty much his shadow. And he left the Carolinas because he knew that he would be killed, because being a black man, he saw his father go through the same racial disparities. And my father's father, his grandfather, my father's grandfather was rich. He was well-to-do. And so The communities all knew him in North Carolina. And so my question has always been, why didn't it pass on to my grandfather's generation? Well, my grandfather, he was well-to-do as well. He had his own businesses. And my father also revealed to me that he was a professional athlete. He played baseball. So that was one of the things that I know he did, but he also had several different businesses that he did. And I would probably say from his athleticism that it probably carried over into his businesses. And so my father, he had training in certain areas where he did okay. He was a welder. He did parts for airplanes, had good jobs and things like that. But then when he left North Carolina, went on into New York after, the transition, it was very difficult in the different attitudes. And this is where the root of his mentality came from. Now, he didn't again spew it all the time. It's just something and so now becoming grown, me and my wife been married now for 41 years and getting ready to celebrate 42 in a few months. Living in New York, taken, beaten, as my wife said, by the police. Now, I've been a minister almost all my life. Mm-hmm. I'm on a mission to minister in Central Park, get attacked by the police, beaten, taken down into the subway, and made to write an excuse and say, we can't tell you what to say, but here's what you need to say. Yeah. And I wrote everything they said. And when I got in front of the judge, I said, well, they told me they couldn't tell me what to say, but here's what they said. And so, of course, I got off as the judge saw my point. We moved to Washington, D.C. Again, police, guns in my face. Come back to North Carolina. We've been back here in North Carolina. Now we have a grown son who's in business, and he's, so I'm staying with racial profiling. So he's in business and he's managing Wachovia. He's gone through college and now he's out. Now he's also getting a taste. Me and him standing outside of the bank. Someone calls the police. We're handling ministry business. Someone calls the police. We go in our separate directions. I have about 5 cop cars following me in one direction. My son goes to the opposite direction, and he has about 5, 6 cop cars on him. And when they stopped me and started questioning me, they took it a little more easy with me because now I'm much older, I'm gray hair, and so they didn't snatch me out of the car. But when they said, who is the young man that was with you? I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Who are you talking about? And then as they started questioning me, I'm realizing you talking about my son. I'm like, okay, what's going on? What's happening with my son? Where is my son? So now I'm raising up.
That's right.
And the papa in me is raising up because my father's been socially profiled, my granddaddy, now my son. I got a 14-year-old grandson now and a 10-year-old granddaughter. When will it stop for us? When you say pull yourself up by the bootstraps, 1912 massacre, went into a particular town where it was blacks, went in there and killed them all off. 1913, 1914, 1917, 1919, 1921. I don't know if you heard of Black Wall Street, all these millionaires, black millionaires, and we're talking about 50 years after slavery. So it's never been good for us. No. So to make America great again, it's never been great for us because we came here as slaves. And we continue after slavery, emancipation, And then we continue with just different errors. I already mentioned those. My wife, redlining is systematic. So in the system, what part of the system that has been built are we free in? It's not the medical community, because we have been doctored on. We have been. I don't know if you ever heard of Tuskegee Airmen. They went into the service and the Tuskegee Project. They were experimented on. The women. Now they missed my mother in North Carolina. They experimented on the women and pushed them into what do they call it?
They sterilized.
Sterilization without them knowing it. They missed my mom because that's the only reason I'm here. Right. That's the only reason I'm here. And so this is what we see for every generation. I'm 60 years old. So all of my life, all of my father's life, my grandfather's life, my great-grandfather, and that's as far as I can go back, because from there, now I go into slavery. My great-great-grandfather was a slave, and he married a Native American who was also a slave. That's as far as I can go. That's a wall. So for us, when it said, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, our community has done that. But every time we've done that, they've gone in with airplanes, with policemen, with the soldiers. In 1919, they were hiding in the bushes. And when the white men came in to slaughter us off, they were hiding. But when the National Guard got there, they came out. And when they came out thinking that they were going to help them, they started shooting them. And so they helped the white community to slaughter them off. And so for us, it's a thing of, as my wife said, it's real easy for someone to say, when are you going to get over it, when you keep reminding us that you're not over it.
It's our lifestyle.
And so then they say today, let's bring it to the modern time. I was going to go into another scripture. I'll just quote it really quick. But here's another thing where what's happening right now. What's happening now is they're saying Black Lives Matter. And so the opposition says all lives matter. But what I have to remind you that, if that was true, if all lives matter, shouldn't Black Lives Matter too? T-O-O. Also, not two, we're going to the store. Also, inclusion. And so when people like my brother, you said you don't allow them. But we just had a brother shot in the back 7 times when he was trying to break up a domestic issue between 2 women. He went in to stop it. The police got there and then went after him. And as he was trying to get into his vehicle, the policeman grabbed him by the back of the shirt and shot him in the back 7 times. Now, you know he's got to be right up on him if he has him by the back of the shirt. Pow, pow, pow. 7 times. Another brother laying in the street with his hands up, and they shoot him. And he survived also. And he said, but why did you shoot me? He said, I don't know. But these are the systematic approaches that we get while someone says, pull yourself up by the bootstrap. Well, those bootstraps might be a weapon. I mean, if Skittles and a hoodie is a weapon, they've come up with every reason to kill us off. Right. And so this is not new for us, but this is all part of what's called profiling. And policemen are now also, some of the different ones are saying, yes, we've done this, and this is what we do. We plant guns, we plant cocaine, we plant or drugs. We do many things to say, you know, we're justifying what we do. But so we're talking about law enforcement, systematic. We're talking about the medical community, systematic. Housing, systematic. Redlining. we're talking about educational redlining. They declare that we don't have brains that's big enough. You know, in I can't remember the date, but one of the professors said Black people's brain are too big, so they cannot function in a normal capacity. And so these are the things that fuel the thought of profiling. So when you see a people of a certain class, they're in this class because they didn't do what was necessary to work their way out. But what happens is when you get a person who become economically independent, they come out of the ghetto and go into a white neighborhood. Guess what happens? They burn their house down, they shoot them, they smoke them out, or they burn a cross in the neighborhood. And so this is what continually we see. So my brother, for you to say you don't let them, how you don't let them when they got the guns? We don't have the guns. We have illegal guns. Guess who buy guns by the dozens in this country? If you get a Black man who have a gun, you better believe it. They'll be at your front door saying, "Oh, you have a registered gun. We need to get it." So that's different for Black people because we can't be known to have guns, and in this country you have to register them. The only way you can have a gun and a license, they have to put a tab on you and keep a tab by the FBI because you are a Black man with a gun. You can fight back. Because when we come with 10 cop cars, like they had on me and my son, and we went and split different ways, but I'm just sharing some things with you. That's my life. This is our life. We got grandchildren now. Don't think I'm going to let them take my grandchildren. Mm-hmm. Don't think I want them to take my son and say, "Oh, we forgive you." See, here's the thing, and I'm going to stop here. We had Martin Luther King, who was embraced because he said, "We will not fight. You can do anything you want to us. You can slap us, hit us, spit on us, because that's the Christian thing to do. And so turn the other cheek. So we're not going to fight." And so they promoted him. Mm-hmm. Then they also killed him. Right. But Malcolm X said, "Look, by any means necessary." So you can almost guess which one I agree with. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I'm a Torah man all the way. And so if you rape my wife, the penalty for that is death. If you rape my daughter, the penalty for that is death. And so I'm a Torah man, and so I believe that we can forgive, but I want the law to be justice for all. And so here's my last point. Do you know they have a death claim on us as Black people to this day? Here's a law that came out in 1967. It's called King Alfred Plan. If in this country anarchy happens and they declare martial law to a great extent, a real strong extent, to the greatest level, the people in this law under the King Alfred's plan is to execute all Black people. And so you may not know that, but this is updated in 1984 under Ronald Reagan to include Hispanics. And so if there's racial riots, which is why it's a bad thing right now, what's going on, because we're standing on the edge of something that you don't fight an enemy behind lines. You go somewhere else and you come at him full front. But guess where we are? We are in our enemy's line. We can't win this fight. So guess who we have to rely on? Because right now, with Ronald Reagan's upgrade, is called Rex 84. They even changed the name to continue to hide it. Rex 84 is the annihilation of all blacks, which now includes Hispanics. So I'm gonna stop there, but just understand that we live every day praying that we go out and come back home.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna stop there, but just understand that this is not a good place for us, but Yahweh is a good Elohim, and he protects us.
We trust him. And I just want to say this one thing really, really quick. And this is, I think, is a great example, because my granddaughter, our granddaughter, who's 10, she is a beautiful spirit. She loves to sing and she's very creative and everything. She was going to school every day and being bullied by this little boy. The little boy just didn't like her. He would take her lunch and throw it in the trash, take her book bag, yank it off of her back, and throw it across the room. He would go over, if she had braids in her hair, pull her hair. He would go, and if she was walking by, he would put his foot out and trip her, and she would fall. And the teacher would do absolutely nothing on her behalf. So finally, my son and daughter-in-law went to the teacher, sat down and said, we got to do something about this. Can we talk to his parents? No, we really can't bring the little boy's parents in, blah, 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 blah. And so the teacher looks at my son and says, well, really, I'm trying to get Elise to stop allowing him to bully her. Really? So I told her at that time, never allow the person who is oppressing you to say, you can do something about me oppressing you. And that's what this country has done. And this is what we hear. This is what we hear. You can make it. Oh, look at Oprah Winfrey. Look at this one. Look at that one. That's 1 out of a million that gets to that place. But what about the other folks that are just hardworking, just regular folks that's just trying to work their job, just trying to go to the grocery store? I can't tell you how many times I have walked into a store and someone has decided to follow me around. And with my personality, I'm happy that Father placed me in the time that he did, because I don't know that I would have made it during the time of my forefathers. Because I have turned around to people and said, if you don't stop following me, you better stop following me. Because I have money in my purse to pay for what I need to pay for. Right. These are things that this is our daily life. So our brown brothers, our native brothers, every single day we were at a tabernacles, and a little girl walks in and says, are they black people? Tabernacles are Hebrew brethren. What in the world is going on? We can't even go amongst our people who are supposed to be our brothers and get the same treatment and just be looked at as people. Yeah. Now, the beautiful thing is, when we met Mark and Adina at that Tabernacles in Chandler, Rabbi James was playing, got up there and played with y'all, did praise and worship. They welcomed him in like he was, like they knew him. We had not seen him. We didn't know him from Adam. But
were you black then?
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Black then. We were.
You were black then.
And they didn't even act like it. The praise team brought them in and brought him in, and he played all week.
I remember.
And that was a beautiful thing, because I'm telling you, we don't get, that's not a normal thing for us.
Yeah.
That's not normal. So for Morgan Freeman to get on there with his privileged self now, I would tell Morgan Freeman to his face, brother, you should be ashamed of yourself for getting on national TV and saying that.
Yeah.
Because you know all we're trying to do is survive. We have a 14-year-old grandson who some white men will look at like he's a grown man and will want to take his life because of it. And he's a baby. They take our children, and if they commit a crime, they automatically, in the state of North Carolina, they will try them as an adult. 13-year-olds in with convict prisons, 13, 14 years old. This is what we get. So now, how do you stop letting people do this to you? Brother, I agree with you when you said if someone comes and steps on your toe, you push him off. Well, this is our way of pushing them off. You're not gonna you don't get to step on my toes anymore. You don't get to do it.
Well, I hope you guys trust us, because I think that is the key to it, is to find who you can trust. And it's the same on our end. We have to find who we can trust too, you know, and I think that is the whole issue behind all of it, is to, there's no understanding. There's no possible way any of us can understand what any of us go through whatsoever at all. There's no understanding. There's the ability to accept you for who you are, no matter what that background is, and to be able to look at each other and trust each other, have each other's backs. That's the number one issue going forward. I can see in the days ahead, is knowing who has my back, and me being able to put the trust out there for other people to know I have their back. And so in the same way as you know, Daryl and Milena and James and Avia, that's all I can do is portray myself as someone that trusts you and wants you to trust me. And if there's anything that I do to mislead that trust, I want to know about it, and so I can correct that, because we have to be able to trust each other's backs and to have each other's backs in the days going forward. That's all there is to it.
Absolutely.
No greater love than a man lay down his life for his friend. And so that's just exactly the way I look at it across the board. It makes no difference. It's across the board to me. So we're going to call it a night. All of us are tired. We've all had a big day today. So anyway, I really appreciate everybody's input. We all know each other better, and we got a little bit more insight into each other's background and where we see. And hey, no matter what it is we've been through, every one of us are still profiling, you know, as we go through life, period. Let's just take the responsibility of recognizing that everybody has been through one thing or another to get them where they're at. So we've got to show respect. That's all there is to it. I love y'all. Thank y'all so much for being with us. And yes.
Can I just say one more thing?
Of course, yes.
I wanted to just bring one more thing to knowledge here. Everyone is familiar with the American national anthem,
Sure.
America, right? And so in the national anthem, or the national, the anthem that's played at sporting events, of which a lot of it would be probably our culture involved in it somewhere, you know, if they're playing basketball, football, or whatever. merged in different sports. Well, most people don't know that in the anthem is an avocation of murder for people of color. In the anthem, the third stanza, which is not sung much anymore, in that, which is why Colin Kaepernick started taking a knee 4 years ago, I think it is now, 2016. And so most people look at him and say he's anti-American. But that's when it came out what was in the anthem, because in school we're taught that. And so in school, this is something they sing. I don't take part in it. And, knowing inside of that song, there's a stanza that says, and it's calling for the bloodshed of African Americans to kill us. And so this was for during the time of the fight of independence. But it didn't come, the song itself, it didn't come out until 1886, I think it was. But around this time is when it was written, and the third stanza, and I'll leave it alone, advocates killing African American. And so this is the song that is sung to this very day in this country. And so when you say you don't allow someone, so how do you take away the song? How do you take away the knee on the neck? How do you take away the foot on the foot? How do you take away the red lining? And so I just want you to, just kind of think about these things, that as we come into this Torah, I love Torah because what it does is it tears down those barriers and walls.
Right.
Even though we have a little ways to go, but it's the best thing ever.
Amen.
It does bring us all together.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Come to Canada.
Come to Canada.
Well,
All right.
I gotta tell you, half of my teacher class, like after they realize how the system's different here in Canada. I'm not saying it's perfect, it's not, but they said we want to come teach in Canada, because in the States is society's been going that direction. So hopefully we pray that God penetrates those hearts that think that it's okay to do that to one another. Yeah.
Amen. All right, I'm going to call it a night. So God bless everybody. Hopefully we'll see you back here soon. So thanks everybody, and we'll hopefully see you back here soon.
All right. Shalom.
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 We are richly blessed to bring